Let me get into my sermon today. I'm running out of time. Last week I did a sermon in Austin called Fine Tuning. I don't know if any of you listened to it or not. It's on the broadcast. If you want to listen to it. I thought more people would listen to it or had listened to the broadcast or gone back and listened to it other than what they had, but I asked a couple here and they said, no, I hadn't listened to it, so okay. I probably should have done it here and then gone on to part 2, but I've got part 2 ready, so I wanted to go ahead and take care of it. But it's just a different segment of what I'm talking about here. It's a section of this book that I've been reading, but let me just go as I have it written here and not get out of my place because I'm starting to jump ahead of myself already. But this is the last Sabbath of the year, and as we approach the end of the ages, we find ourselves experiencing fulfillment of God's prophecies before our very eyes, just like I just talked about as far as Israel's concerned. But there's also something else that's special that's happening, in particular in the world of science. Men and women of science are finding God in the strangest places, believe it or not. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because I didn't know that there was this great thing going on in the world of science. But my eyes have been opened by a book I've been reading. And let me begin by saying this. Science for the last 400 years has tried using its influence to disprove the existence of a grand creator of our universe. That's been their agenda. Today, however, science is in the middle of its own conundrum, because science has become the mechanism in which God is being revealed to thousands of skeptics throughout the world. And Michael J. Denton, a senior research fellow in human molecular genetics at the University of Otago in New Zealand, in his book in 1998, Nature's Destiny, said this: No other theory, concept, or imagined by man can equal the boldness and audacity of his great claim that all the starry heavens and every species of life, that every characteristic of reality exists to create a livable habitat for mankind. But most remarkably given is audacity, its claim, which is very far from a discredited specific myth. In fact, no observation has ever laid the presumption to rest, and today, 4 centuries after scientific revolution, the doctrine is again re-emerging. In these last decades of the 20th century, its credibility is being enhanced by the discoveries in several branches of fundamental science. And I'm basing what I'm talking about because, like I talked last week about fine-tuning, it's based on a book called The Case for a Creator by Lee Strobel. If you get an opportunity to buy the book, I would highly recommend it. And you will learn more in that book than you will ever have heard or been told or anything else. And it's about $5, maybe another $5 for shipping and handling. But it's called The Case for a Creator. And let me give you a little background. I gave this last week, but I think it's important that you understand who this man was. He became a skeptic of a religion when he learned about Darwinism as a young student in college. He was intrigued by Darwinism and seemed logical to him, and so he took the road of atheism based upon that. And after graduating from college, he worked for a major Chicago newspaper and went on to graduate school at an Ivy League college. Later on, his wife became a Christian and began conversing with him about becoming a Christian. And spurred by his wife's Christianity, he later began investigating evidence for a creator. With this in mind, and open to the facts wherever they would lead him, he began his odyssey to find God through science, or disprove God, whichever. He eventually ended up shedding his atheism and embracing God, and he documents his journey to Christianity with this book and a couple others that he's wrote as well. And you know what? When I gave the sermon last week, I put it on YouTube. And you know your job is you're doing your job well as a religious leader when you're hitting nerves out there and people are writing you nasty little notes. So I kind of hit a nerve with an atheist and made him mad. And he posted this as a comment on my YouTube sermon. And I'll read you the whole thing. It doesn't bother me. I think it's kind of funny. And he says, "We have whole models for how things developed on the earth. Why are you presenting a half-blank blank wasn't the word, pseudoscientific creationism model when we already have much better, more detailed explanatory model with confirmed, accurate, predictive power, model available? It's like you are a child saying, 'I want magic, not learning.'" All right, I'm going to address that. But let me say this. This guy may have been in the scientific field. He may have some knowledge of science or whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to attack his credibility on it or anything else. But I feel like he's probably an atheist, and he just didn't like what he heard. And so there was this guy named Prt2, and I used this last week, and he made this quote, and I thought it was so funny because it really, really hits the nail. He said, "These are inflammatory times and the cost for atheism has just gone up." An evolutionary biologist and historian, William Provine of Cornell University made this statement: "If Darwinism is true, then there are 5 inescapable conclusions." There's no evidence for God. There's no life after death. There's no absolute foundation for right and wrong. There are no ultimate meaning for life. And number 5, people don't really have free will. Sounds pretty bleak to me. But to look at all the universe for what it is and see absolutely nothing that speaks to God is pretty sad. So if Darwinism is absolutely true, we won't find any evidence of a creator anywhere we look, and the Bible is mere fantasy when it says in Romans 1 verse 18, "For the wrath of God is revealed," Romans 1 verse 18, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although He knew God, they did not glorify Him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their own thoughts, and were foolish in their hearts, were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds and 4-footed animals and creeping things." So, they reject God on every level in place of their science in many cases. But back to our friend. According to scientists, I'm quoting, "Most models in laboratories break down in the light of evidence." I wasn't going to go into this part today, but I think it helps answer the question of reliability of models produced in laboratories. You ever heard of Miller's experiment? Some of you may have. I don't know. Nick may have. It's a 1953 Miller's experiment, by the way, which is in nearly every high school and in college textbook, or was at one time, and still in many of them today. And it's on evolution and the Earth's origin, and is used to illustrate how it came to happen. And what it does, it shoots electricity through an artificial atmosphere that is designed to mimic the premortal atmosphere of the Earth at the time life began. And it was at that time that evolutionists believed that the first amino acids appeared and the building blocks of life were created in a basic cesspool. And then there was life. Now, the implication of these experiments are that life can be created in a lab without God's intervention. They have a problem. Well, they have more than one. They have a few. Number one, they have no idea what the correct makeup of the atmosphere was at that time. It's only speculation, hypotheses. Miller's experiment is based upon a hydrogen-rich mixture of methane, ammonia, and water vapor based on the atmosphere. But in the 1970s, a Belgian biochemist, Marcel Florkin, said it was not right, it just didn't fit. And two other scientists in 1995, Klaus Doss and Sidney Fox, confirmed Miller had used the wrong gas mixture. Science magazine 1995 also dismissed Miller's conclusions. Scientists today, Beth hypothesis is that the atmosphere consisted of very little hydrogen because it would have escaped. It's too light. It would have escaped in space, into the atmosphere, and gone. They think it consisted of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water vapor, which is consistent because we have carbon dioxide in our atmosphere today. But the kicker is many schools and colleges are still using the textbooks that have Miller's experiments inside them. And they still go through the lab experiences of producing the atmosphere and telling kids this is what happened, even though it's been debunked. So don't tell me that the labs and the models that they are producing out of labs are exact and correct, and they tell us what happened back then, because that's a bunch of bunk. Now, there may be, I'm not saying everything is wrong. I'm just saying that he makes his claim that they do. So you have a problem stating textbook proofs that something is real in science, because science changes about every decade of what they know, probably even faster than that. And there are many other issues as well with other settled science. For instance, I just read this week, and you may have read it, where 31,487 scientists, 9,029 of them with PhDs, have signed a petition that basically says there is no convincing evidence humans contribute to greenhouse gases, disrupting the Earth's climate. They are urging the government to back off their claims that it does. But it's my desire to cover as many aspects of the sciences in this series of sermons that I do. And I did physics last week and parts of some of the others. But today I'm going to focus on astronomy. But I'm also going to cover biochemistry, DNA, evolution, and some of the other things, because I believe it's important to understand science for what it is and what it really proves to us as humans. Now, I may be childlike in my love for God, but what scientists are teaching the unlearned world today has more to do with magic than facts in so many cases. And this book that I gave you the name of, he does a good job of pointing all that out. Believing in God is considerably more solid than believing in junk science. Let me put it that way. Like I said, I covered the physics of fine-tuning last week. And today I want to cover astronomy and the Earth. And like I said, you can watch last week's sermon on the website. I actually made some copies. If you want a copy here, you can get a copy of it. But let's see. I'm not going to get into some of the stuff that I got into last week. I may delve into gravity just a little bit because it has to do with some of the other things I have to talk about. But I talked about it last week. But first off, let's begin with the Big Bang. Did it happen? Was there some reason other than God that can explain the beginning of the universe? Well, Scriptures tell us that God was responsible for the beginning of the universe. In Genesis 1:1, we're told, Genesis 1:1, he says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." He created the heavens and the earth. So we've got no doubt as to the scriptural side, the theology side of the argument, that God was the creator of the heavens and the earth. And how he did that What method he used, I have no idea. I wasn't there. But you know what? Neither were the scientists. So we're on equal footing. And he said the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the water. As one of God's own, it's enough to know that we were created and there is a Creator, and know who that Creator is according to John 1:1. And it says, in the beginning was a Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and He was a beginning with God, and all things were made through Him, and without Him nothing was made that was made. In Him was life, and life was the light of men, and the light shines in darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. That was John 1:1. So it says that Christ was the Creator. It says all things were made through Him and for Him. Now, there is a consensus. The consensus is, out of nothing came something. Man cannot explain that by science alone. As a matter of fact, they fell in that regard. They hypothesize and theorize explanations for the unknown in their minds. And let me throw a disclaimer in here right quick, because Virginia got on me a little bit about this because I didn't make this real clear. I'm not advocating there was a Big Bang, the way science says, okay? Or the universe even began billions of years ago. The book In 6 Days by John F. Ashton makes a very good case for all things beginning 6,000 years ago, if you want to read that book. And he gives some very convincing evidence. But that doesn't matter. Whichever the fence you're on, it isn't important right now. It did happen, though, and the fact we're sitting here today is proof. So whether it was by God or something else, there was a beginning. Well, but for the sake of argument, let's say that there was a huge bang from nothing, as scientists advocate. So what are some of the problems that we see from this? Well, there's plenty, according to Alan Rex Sandridge, considered the greatest cosmologist in the world. I got to say that very carefully because I keep wanting to say cosmetologist. But he shocked an audience of his equals in 1985 when he made this statement in a symposium. He said, the Big Bang was a supernatural event that cannot be explained within the realm of physics as we know it. Science has taken us from the first event, but it can't take us further to the first cause. The sudden emergence of matter, space, time, and energy pointed to the need of some kind of transcendence. That's a scientist well known for his work in the field. One of the best known, as a matter of fact. Why would a man of this stature and learning come to such a conclusion? Because the evidence of what we have in our world, in our universe, in our galaxy has shown it to him. And Stephen C. Meyer, a PhD, he said this: there was a beginning of the universe most cosmologists agree on. But to support a biological life, it required a lot of fine-tuning. It suggests a grand designer of a creator. And here's an additional quote: you can invoke neither time, nor space, nor matter, nor energy, nor the laws of nature to explain the origin of the universe. General relativity points to the need of cause that transcends those domains, and theism affirms the existence of such an entity, namely God. Example, fine-tuning for the expansion rate of the universe is fine-tuned to the rate of 1 to 1 trillion, 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 trillion. That is one part in either direction. A little slower or a little faster we could not have a universe. This is showed by fundamental laws of physics backed by mathematics, as Sir Fred Hoyle commented. A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that the superintelligent has monkeyed with the physics, as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. In other words, things didn't happen by happenstance or by accident. There are no other theories out there that try and explain that can explain how the universe began, not in a rational way. They all fell in the light of fact. They haven't been proven. No theory has been proven by any extent, no matter what scientific fans believe. It just hadn't happened. So let's move on. Let's get into something a little different. Let's talk a little bit more about our Earth and where it's located in our galaxy and in our solar system. This is something for the Sci-Fi Channel doesn't want to hear, nor those that firmly believe in life exists in abundance on other planets out there. This is just going to shoot them down, and they'll probably stay up all night crying. Our world is a very special place. It's one of a kind. Scientists agreed on that. They know of no other worlds like ours in the universe, any other solar system that have been discovered. And they will say not yet anyway. But let's take a look at our world and see what it makes it so special. Many things come together to make the Earth livable, and that's where fine-tuning comes in. And we talk about fine-tuning. Lee Strobel interviewing Guillermo Gonzalez and J. Wesley Richards, both PhDs in astronomy, talking about Earth, says it takes the moon, the sun, and tectonic plates. Well, these are my words. It takes the moon, the sun, tectonic plates, tidal movements, currents in the ocean, water itself, mountains, even algae in the sea to sustain life on our planet. So our relationship to the sun, for instance, and I'm basing this off their interview and their words. Our sun is what's called a yellow dwarf star. It's a G2. It's a special type. It is only one of 10% in the whole universe with the correct mass to sustain life. 80% of the stars in the galaxy or the universe are red dwarfs. Let me back up and say galaxy. Are red dwarfs, which these men believe are incapable of sustaining life for a variety of reasons. For one, they emit very little ultraviolet light, and that's something that's required for life on a planet. But our sun is the right size, burns exactly at the right temperature. It is metal rich, which allows it to give off gas and burn longer. Most stars burn out, they estimate, in about 4 billion years because they don't have the kind of compounds that are needed within them. Our sun does, and they estimate that it'll burn for 10 billion years. Longer. Our sun is the right color. If it was redder or bluer, photosynthesis response would be weaker, which is one of the problems with the red dwarfs. Our sun is also the right mass. If it was larger, its brightness would change too quickly, it would burn up too quick, and there would be too much high energy radiation for us to sustain life. If it were smaller, the range of planetary distances able to support life would be too narrow, and the right distance would be so close to the star it would either burn up or the tidal forces would disrupt the planet's rotational cycle. UV radiation would also be inadequate for photosynthesis. The Earth's distance from the sun is crucial for stable water cycle. Too far away, water would freeze. Too close, water would boil. It is what's called the habitable zone for a planet to exist. You hear that sometimes in some of these science shows and stuff, but they don't explain it very well. The sun and the solar system has everything it needs to sustain life on our planet. Too much of one thing, we're dead. Too little, we're dead. The Earth's gravity and axial tilt, rotation period, magnetic field, crust thickness, oxygen-nitrogen ratio, carbon dioxide, water vapor, and ozone levels are just the right amount. Thickness and distance of the sun, right, everything. The moon is the exact distance from the Earth to influence it perfectly. The moon's effect on the pull of the Earth is about 60%, and the sun contributes another 40%. The moon's gravitational pull is key to making the Earth a livable planet by moderating the degree of wobble in the Earth's axial tilt, which has led to a relatively stable climate. The moon actually stabilizes the Earth's tilt. It is responsible for our seasons. The Earth is pulled northward by the moon for 6 months and then southward for 6 months, giving us our seasons. The Earth tilts toward the moon at a maximum of 23.5 degrees. Any more on one side or the other, and we would be completely frozen on one side and burning up on the other. The moon's gravity pulls at Earth, causing predictable rises and falls in the sea level known as tides, and to a smaller extent, tides also occur in the lakes and seas. It also affects the Earth's layer and crust. The tides keep the ocean currents moving. That's important because the ocean dissipates a lot of the Earth's heat. It has to circulate to help maintain the climate. Tides also bring in nutrients, take away trash from our shores. Now, the Earth is the right size with perfect gravitational force, which I covered last week. And any larger, the land masses couldn't support themselves with all the water we have. They would fracture under the weight, and the Earth would become a smooth sphere. What does that mean? Well, let's just say it like this. Mountains are a necessary element for our planet's survival. If the world were flat, we would live in a water world 2 kilometers deep. The world wouldn't be able to sustain life because the oceans would become too concentrated with salt. There wouldn't be any life anyway. You say, well, the fishes and all that stuff would live. No, the salt would kill them. Become too concentrated. Because we have land masses with mountain, we have marshy areas around our coastlines and stuff. And what that does is they evaporate a lot of the salt. It gets trapped in the marshy areas, and it maintains a constant level within the seas and keeps them from becoming too salty. If the Earth were flat, those things couldn't happen. Another thing you probably never considered that affects the Earth in a major way in regards to supporting life is the tectonic plates, called the engine of the Earth. The tectonic plates and continental drift are extremely important to sustaining our life on our planet, believe it or not. We think they're harmful and stuff like that, but they're not. You may ask why? Well, great question. If so forth. For one, it's crucial for forming of the mountain ranges, which we discovered we had to have to abate the waters and the salt in the sea. And a couple of scientists named Warren Brownie wrote a book called Rare Earth, stated plate tectonics is a central requirement for life on the planet. They also added, of all the planets and moons in our solar system, plate tectonics is only found on Earth. Other planets don't have it. In fact, any heavenly body would need oceans of water as a prerequisite to having plate tectonics in order to lubricate and facilitate the movement of the plates. It also regulates the carbon dioxide rock cycle, and this is critical for regulating and balancing the greenhouse gases. Like carbon dioxide absorbed infrared energy and helps warm the planet, the problem can arise if the concentration exceeds higher level. But the sun regulates those levels by its actions on our atmosphere. The plates also fragment the crust and the limestone in the crust, and by their gradual movements, grinding them down and liquefying some elements and grinding the other stuff into metals and components, small, and elements necessary for life, much of which they're released through the volcanic vents that we have around, like the Ring of Fire and different things like that, and they're vented into the atmosphere by volcanoes. But there's so much more to this and other things about the planet and the precision and everything that is required. In Isaiah chapter 45:12, it says, Isaiah chapter 45:12, he says, I have made the earth and created man on it. My hands, stretched out the heavens, and all their host I have commanded. God did this. He fine-tuned this, all the particulars of the universe and our earth and everything that has to do with it. It goes so much farther than what I'm able to speak about. But I want to move on to the main part of my sermon about earth. And it has to do where earth is located in our universe. Even that was fine-tuned. Many scientists would have you believe you can find life just about anywhere in the stars if you look long enough and in the right ways. But is that true? Are we living in a universe filled with life-sustaining planets, as some advocate? Well, let's look at that. The first element for life is water, as it talked about in the tectonic plates. Not just water, but liquid water. Liquid water is called the universal solvent, necessary for reactions to take place. So you have to have the right solar system with the right type of sun, with the right type of planet, and the right distance from each other to be able to feel life on that planet, to even begin to think about it. You also need carbon, which serves as core atom for the information-carrying structural molecules of life. The human body requires 26 essential elements. A simple bacterium requires about 16. The core elements would have to be present before that could even happen. You would not believe the astronomical numbers involved for that to be present. So the problem you have is not just any planet's going to have all the ingredients necessary for sustaining life. The odds are astronomical, and it's just not possible to think about it in our terms. And no, it's not possible that there is a silicone-based life form, as they show on Star Trek. And the book makes it very good and clear as to that reason why that is. I'm not going into it today. So I know you Trekkies are starting to really wipe away the eyes. But not just any chemical makeup is important, but where the planet sits in our galaxy in its own solar system with the right type of star, our planet sits in what is called a safe zone. That's the astronomical term, and they call it the safe zone in the universe or in the galaxy. Now there's 3 types of galaxies in our universe. The first one is the one that we're in. It's called a spiral galaxy. And it's one that looks like a giant pinwheel with the fingers coming off of it like it's spinning. And that's the type we're in, like I said, like the Milky Way. And 2 is called an elliptical galaxy. They are sort of egg-shaped. You've seen them on some of the pictures you get through Hubble telescope and stuff and different things. And then there's what they call irregular galaxies. They appear distorted, disorganized, just chaotic at best. Our type of galaxy is the right type capable of having life-bearing planets. And without getting too deep into the weeds, the other types, let's just say, they have a lot of problems and a lot of chaos going in within them, with supernovas exploding and high rates and of radiation and gases in the form of molecular clouds and black holes. And there's just too much of this going on in them for the existence of life, or for a life-bearing planet would be next to impossible within those types. So in our galaxy, Earth is sitting on one of the extended arms of the galaxy, way out kind of in the suburbs of our galaxy. Our solar system sits in one of those arms. We wouldn't want to be any closer to the center of our galaxy either. The more densely areas of the galaxy are the most dangerous places for any planet or solar system to be, because that's where stars are born and created. And that would be putting us at high risk. There's so many things in the areas of galaxy that are just too dangerous for life. Things in our galaxy that can destroy us are life gamma radiation, black holes, X-rays, particle radiation. So any closer towards the middle of our galaxy, our planet would be subject to this and more. The center of a spiral, like I said, are where stars are born and created, not in Hollywood. Although they may believe I'm speaking about them, I'm not. The stars are cooked in a mixture of hydrogen, helium, and heavy elements, and they're cooked very quickly. And the paradox is the outer region of the galaxies have less of this happening because of the lack of elements necessary to form planets, so it's less likely there will be planets in the outer regions of galaxies, yet here we are. And you can add to this the thinness in the structure of our galaxy, which actually helps in maintaining the sun's consistent orbit within the galaxy. As Gonzalez puts it, in terms of habitability, I think we are at the best possible place, because our location provides enough building blocks to yield an Earth while providing low level of threats to life. He continued to say, I really can't come up with an example of another place in the galaxy that is friendly to life as our location. We're in the absolute perfect place once more. So it doesn't matter where you look, fine-tuning is there. Fine-tuning by God. It reminds me of an engine of a car. For it to run perfectly, the engine of a car, everything has to be milled precisely. It has to be in the perfect place. It has to be there for a specific purpose. It can't be any variance one way or another in the parts. It can't just be happenstance. Everything is there perfectly for that engine to run smoothly. You can't take the carburetor off and the engine run. Well, I don't even know if they have carburetors anymore. But you get what I'm saying. It doesn't matter where you look. Fine-tuning's there. For man to exist, everything had to be just right. Perfect. And it couldn't gradually happen that way. Stop and think about it. An engine just didn't work its way into existence. Somebody had to mill the parts, somebody had to put them together, and somebody had to make it run. And that's exactly the way things are in our universe. Things just didn't come together happenstance. Everything had to be in a perfect location with the right elevations at the right moment, or let's say elements. So you can take one aspect of all this, and science calls that incredibly happenstance, like life forming in a pool of amino acids, and then a few million years later along comes man. But put it all together, and happenstance simply just isn't enough anymore. And they're seeing that. They understand that. They know that. It just doesn't work as a model anymore. And if scientists are true to their faith and true to their beliefs, then they will do what science tells them to do. Theorize and then prove the theory. Investigate. Follow the facts. And not make stuff up. But you know what? God put Earth in this location for another reason. He put it in the perfect place for another reason. We are in the best position within our galaxy to detect cosmic background radiation. What he means by that, if we were in any other place in the galaxy, we couldn't see the heavens because the cosmic radiation and clouds and stuff would block them. Block our view from Earth. We wouldn't be able to see it. And that's important to view the universe and its origins. In Psalms 19, verses 1 through 2, he says to the choir master, a psalm of David, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims His handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge." And one other thing, God can look down upon His creation. When you figure it all and compared to other things that make our world unique, what you're left with is God. Colossians 1:16, he says, "For by Him all things were created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible. Whether there be thrones or dominions or principalities or power, all things were created by Him and for Him." A man named John O'Keefe, described as a godfather of astrology, he ran a mathematical estimation with all the variables included in the right conditions for life existing everywhere or anywhere. And he concluded that if his assumptions were correct based on mathematical probabilities, only one planet in the universe is likely to bear intelligent life. You know what? We know of one. And that's what he said. We know of one, the Earth. It's not certain that there are many others like it, or perhaps there are no others. And those were his words. That's how unique this planet is. That's how incredibly fine-tuned this solar system, this world, this moon, this everything is in this life. God did this for a reason, and we learn more as we see His hand in our lives. In Job chapter 12, 7 through 9, he says this. He says, "But ask the beast, and they will teach you. The birds of the heavens, and they will tell you. Or the bushes of the earth, and they will teach you. And the fish of the sea will declare to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Eternal has done this?" Man. That's my emphasis. Yes, when we look at all this, they tell us volumes about the family of Elohim and His creation. They tell us the Father and Jesus fine-tuned our universe for our habitability and for His purpose. Life was breathed into Adam in a perfect world and a perfect place in our universe. And that shows God's care. That shows God's power. That shows His glory. And it also shows God's protecting what He has created. In Psalms 33, verse 6, he says, "By the word of the Eternal the heavens were made, and by the breath of His mouth all their host." How can you not be amazed? How can you not bow down to the glory? How can you even begin to have doubts? God is real. He's alive and well, and He will not suffer fools much longer. In God's creation story, though, there's one aspect we often overlook. The Sabbath. Exodus 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day. Keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the eternal your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your maidservant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger within your gates. For 6 days the Eternal made the heavens and the earth and the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Eternal blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. He says 6 days He fine-tuned the universe, created the world that we live on, fine-tuned everything so that we could live, so that this could all happen. But the seventh day was part of His creation. And it was fine-tuned for man. It was a time fine-tuned for man. God took 6 days to fine-tune the universe perfectly for man and His purpose. Because during this creation period, time was established by His eternal Word. Days, months, years were established as we know them. He then made the perfect day, the last day in the week. His tables of time call it the Sabbath. He called it the Sabbath, the seventh day. The Sabbath is a law of God and just as absolute as gravity is. It's perfect in so many ways, and it can't be changed. It can't be pushed too far this way. It can't be pushed too far that way. Any at all. It just doesn't fit any other place. They've tried. It does not fit. It can't be changed the least little bit because it was fine-tuned for man. But like we've seen so many other things, man has his own thoughts about that. Psalms 14:1. Psalms 14:1. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none that doeth good. Gonzalez also stated this: the conditions for making scientific discoveries on earth are so fine-tuned that you would need a great amount of faith to attribute them to mere chance. Chance and science is man's God, and they have put their lives and their faith solely upon them, even in the light of evidence that we can see here that other scientists are digging out constantly. And they ride contrary to their beliefs, but they don't follow the facts either. And they certainly don't follow the facts in the light of Scripture. Well, it'll soon be God's turn to set things right, and all this will begin to make sense to so many who believe that they can change God and an entity that can do all that I've spoken about and much more. It's incredible when you get into the things that this book talks about in the fine-tuning of our earth, of our solar system, of even our DNA. So I'm going to do a third part of this series, and it'll be dealing with the biochemistry and the molecular world and the fine-tuning required for life to be here. Because that one will blow your mind too.